Eleanor sat alone at her small kitchen table, her fingers wrapped around a chipped floral teacup. The tea inside had long gone cold, a thin film forming on its surface, but she couldn't bring herself to take another sip. Across from her, an empty chair stared back, Harold's chair. She had kept it exactly where it always was, as if he might walk in at any moment, complaining about his aching knees or telling her a new joke he had heard at the grocery store. The kitchen, once filled with the warmth of Sunday roasts and the laughter of children and grandchildren, felt more like a museum now. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, its sound almost mocking in the stillness. Dust gathered on the windowsill where she used to place fresh daisies from the garden Harold had loved so much. She reached for the newspaper, the crinkle breaking the silence for a brief second. But the stories inside felt foreign, like they belonged to a different world, one that moved too quickly for her to catch up. She thought of her children, both living states away. They called sometimes, but always in a rush, voices tight with obligations. "Love you, Mom," they'd say before quickly hanging up. Eleanor's gaze drifted to an old photo on the counter, Harold in his favorite plaid shirt, his arm wrapped around her waist, both of them beaming at a long-ago family barbecue. Her heart ached at the memory of that touch, that laughter. She stood up and shuffled to the window, watching the neighbor's dog chase a squirrel around the yard. Even the dog seemed to have more purpose than she felt these days. Loneliness wasn't just an empty house, it was the echo of everything you've lost, the heavy blanket that settled on your shoulders each morning and refused to lift. Eleanor pressed her hand against the glass, her reflection looking back at her, tired and alone. In that moment, she wondered if anyone even remembered the woman she used to be. The next day brought a heavy rain that drummed against the roof like a steady heartbeat. Eleanor sat by the window, tracing raindrops as they raced down the glass. She felt that same race inside her, a quiet, endless loop of memories and regrets. Then, a sudden knock at the door jolted her. Eleanor froze. No one ever visited unannounced. Was it a mistake? A package for someone else? Slowly, cautiously, she shuffled to the door, her thin hand trembling as she turned the handle. Standing there, soaked but smiling brightly, was a young woman holding a warm, steaming meal container. Her dark hair clung to her cheeks, and her eyes shone with kindness. "Hi, Ms. Eleanor. I'm Sarah from Meals on Wheels," the woman said cheerfully. "I brought you lunch today." Eleanor blinked in surprise. Her first instinct was to apologize for the clutter, the dusty corners she had given up cleaning. But before she could say a word, Sarah stepped in with gentle confidence, setting the meal on the table. "Oh. You like tulips?" Sarah said, pointing to a faded calendar on the wall. Eleanor nodded shyly, a small smile tugging at her lips for the first time in what felt like years. Sarah sat down across from her, unpacking the lunch and chatting as if they were old friends. She asked about Eleanor's favorite recipes, her garden, her family. At first, Eleanor gave short, guarded answers. But Sarah listened so intently, leaning in with wide, sincere eyes, that Eleanor found herself opening up. She spoke about Harold's jokes, how he always sang off-key in the mornings. She described her daughter's wedding, the pink roses, the laughter under twinkling fairy lights. The stories spilled out, each word softening the walls she had built around her heart. Sarah listened without rushing, without glancing at a watch or phone. In that simple act of listening, Eleanor felt alive, not as an old woman with fading memories, but as a whole person with a lifetime of love and laughter inside her. As Sarah stood to leave, Eleanor felt a pang of sadness, but also a spark of warmth she hadn't felt in years. In that brief afternoon, she had remembered what it meant to be seen. The next week, Sarah returned with the same bright energy, carrying another warm meal and an even warmer smile. Eleanor had started looking forward to these visits, even brushing her hair and changing her dress beforehand, small things she hadn't bothered with in years. This time, Sarah seemed extra excited. She set the meal down and reached into her bag, pulling out a colorful flyer. "Ms. Eleanor," she said, eyes shining, there's a community lunch at the center this Saturday. They're inviting seniors to come share a meal and stories. You should come with me. Eleanor's heart raced. Go out. Eat with strangers. She hadn't been in a crowd since Harold's funeral. The idea terrified her. She opened her mouth to refuse, but Sarah squeezed her hand gently. I'll be there with you the whole time, Sarah promised. You don't have to say a word if you don't want to. Just come and feel the warmth. You deserve it. After a long pause, Eleanor nodded hesitantly. That Saturday, Eleanor put on a soft blue dress Harold had always loved, smoothing it carefully. As Sarah helped her into the car, Eleanor felt as though she was stepping into a world she had almost forgotten. The community center buzzed with chatter and laughter. Long tables overflowed with dishes, steaming casseroles, fresh salads, warm bread. Seniors sat in small groups, some laughing loudly, others sharing quiet, tender moments. At first, Eleanor felt invisible. She clutched her purse tightly, her eyes darting around the room. But soon, a woman named Marge leaned over with a wide grin. I love your dress, she said. You look beautiful. A man named George introduced himself and asked if Eleanor liked gardening. Before long, Eleanor was talking about Harold's tomatoes and the roses she used to tend. Another woman shared her favorite pie recipes, and soon Eleanor found herself laughing, a gentle, surprised sound that echoed in her chest like music. By the end of lunch, Eleanor had exchanged phone numbers, received an invitation to a gardening club, and even promised to bring her old cookie recipe to the next gathering. In that noisy hall, surrounded by strangers turned friends, Eleanor felt something she hadn't felt in years, belonging. That evening, Eleanor returned home feeling both exhausted and electrified. Her cheeks were flushed, her hands still warm from all the new handshakes and hugs. She set her purse down on the kitchen table and took a deep breath, feeling her heart beat stronger than it had in years. She glanced toward the living room where Harold's old record player sat covered in a thin layer of dust. An idea sparked inside her, hesitant at first but then glowing brighter. Slowly, she crossed the room, her fingers trembling as she lifted the dust cover and chose a record. As the needle dropped, the gentle crackle of vinyl filled the room. Then, a slow, familiar melody drifted out, the song she and Harold had danced to on their 50th wedding anniversary. Eleanor closed her eyes. She could almost feel his arms around her waist, guiding her gently across the floor. Her body moved instinctively, swaying to the music. Her feet, though unsteady at first, found a quiet rhythm. Tears slid down her cheeks, but they were warm, grateful tears rather than those of loneliness. She twirled slowly, her heart whispering, I'm still here. I'm still alive. As the song played on, she pictured her new friends, Marge laughing over her pie recipe, George describing his sunflowers, Sarah beaming with pride. She thought of the phone numbers scribbled on a crumpled napkin now lying on her kitchen table. Each number was a doorway to a new memory, a new moment of connection. Eleanor realized she didn't have to erase the empty chair at her table or forget Harold's jokes. Instead, she could carry him forward while opening her heart to new joys. When the record ended, she stood still, breathing deeply. She felt transformed, not just as a widow or an elderly woman, but as Eleanor, a woman with a past, a present, and a future. With a soft laugh, she whispered into the quiet room, I'm not done dancing yet. Then she turned, her eyes bright, already planning tomorrow's phone calls, tomorrow's steps, tomorrow's smiles.